I'm Matthew Woods, host of Leading Out of the Woods, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Saturday morning, or it may be evening, or it may be Sunday, depending on where you are in the world. I appreciate you guys making us part of your day. Thank you so much, as always, for all of your support. Thank you for all the listens. Thank you for all the feedback. We really appreciate it because, as you know, we're always working hard to just bring you the best and just give you the best of us. So today, like every other Saturday, we've got a great show with some amazing guests that I am really excited to have on the show today and just have a wonderful, amazing conversation with them. Today, we have the hosts of the Punk Rock Classrooms podcast. We've got Josh Buckley and Mike Earnshaw that are joining us today. Gentlemen, how are you this morning?
Stoked to be here this morning, Fawn. Stoked to be here. A little early. It's a little early in Arizona, but I got my coffee. I'm ready to go.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys. And like you said, making it happen in different time zones all at the same time. And trust me, I know it's that weird, like you said, you're on that West Coast time. I remember, living on that West Coast time for a year, but thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And so today we're definitely just going to have a great chat today. We're going to be talking about the passion, unity, and the DIY classroom, which is pretty much what you embody, what you share in your podcast. So we're going to get started from the very beginning and, some introductions. And I really want to know your story, where you're coming from, as far as falling into education, falling in love with it and what you're doing and just your experiences. I always love our audience members, including myself, just to be able to see things from different perspectives and people that may have not gone maybe a traditional route into education and being now in the education world and how that's been. So we'll go ahead and get started with Josh. Josh, if you don't mind just giving our audience just a little brief introduction, your context in education, and if you can add one interesting thing about yourself that people may not know.
Sure. So my name's Josh Buckley. I am currently a Title I specialist at an elementary school in Mesa, Arizona. But I spent the last 15 years as a social studies teacher, 1 year in junior high, 14 years in high school, teaching economics, government, U.S. history, psychology, AP economics, all sorts of stuff in that realm. I found myself deciding, we talked about this before the show, like getting one master's degree wasn't enough. I set out to get a second master's degree, this one in administration, and found myself kind of falling in love with the elementary set and I did an internship at an elementary school, really loved it. And the principal's like, hey, my Title I position is going to open. You want to put in for that? Would you like that job? And I was like, yeah, sure. Let's do it. So I ran Title I summer school by myself, kind of jumped in feet first, baptism by fire. And I think I've opened far more milk cartons than I ever have in my entire life. In the last 4 weeks, I think we're 4 weeks into the school year. So I've opened way more milk cartons than I ever thought I would. But it's been awesome. It's been great. A fact about myself that people might not know. I can't talk about guitars because those are behind me. I guess I'm a giant comic book nerd, right? So I love comic books. I've read comic books since I was in, like sixth grade or something like that. 10 years, fifth, sixth grade, and have loved them for a really long time. It's something that I brought into the classroom with me. We used to read different historical takes on stuff through comic books, and so that's my little thing that maybe not everybody knows.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Josh. I appreciate that introduction, and just again, thank you for sharing the passion for opening milk cartons. But that's great. But you know what? It's all part of that experience.
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's the thing about education. There's things that you think you're never gonna do, and you end up doing it, and you're like, man, that is so cool. Just even opening up milk crates, you have stories to tell.
Right.
So that's amazing. I'd like to welcome our great friend AJ Bianco, who's joining us this morning. Says, "Good morning, gentlemen. Looking forward to the conversation." AJ Bianco is an amazing administrator. He just turned into, he went into administration. He is an administrator / still teacher at heart. Wonderful guy. So thank you so much. And he says, congrats, Josh, on the new role. Big moves. Thank you, AJ, for joining us. Mike, let us know a little bit about yourself, your context in education. And again, if you can include one interesting fact about yourself that people may not know.
Okay. So I'm Mike Earnshaw. I started off as a middle school ELA teacher for about 12 years. And then, I wanted to pursue, another degree, get a master's. And my current administration I was teaching was kind of like, oh, you'd be great in school administration. I was like, no way. I do not want to go that route. And I was chaperoning a basketball game. And I was about to get married, and they're like, no, seriously, like go the administration route. It's going to open more doors. So came back from my honeymoon, went back to school and started going to school for school administration and fell in love with it. That whole cliche saying is like, oh, you can reach more people, more kids being in that role. So I became an assistant principal in the district I'm currently in at the middle school. So I was the assistant principal for 2 years there. They had an interesting concept. There was a principal. Each grade level, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, had their own assistant principal, and then there was a dean. So essentially, I looked at it as like the principal was like the superintendent, and I was the principal of the 7th grade team, which gave me a lot of good experience to run my own building. So after 2 years of that, there were some retirements and whatnot. So a principalship opened up at one of our elementary buildings. Like Josh, I never pictured myself to be an elementary school educator. But I'm like, I wanted to get that, become a principal, have my own building. So I went for it, got it. And in my 8th year there now, and I have fallen in love with elementary school. Like there's a lot of milk cartons and juice, and I'm spilling those juice cups that have too much liquid in them. It's on my shoes right every day, but
those get you.
But it's
juice grenades. Juice grenades.
Yeah. And an interesting fact about me: I cannot whistle. I cannot snap my fingers, and when I count on both, and on either hand, I can't lift my ring finger. So I have to go. Then I can do it. If I go like this, I can't lift the ring finger.
Wow.
There you go. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
hey,
I'm a freak.
There you go. Hey, no, not at all. Not at all. You're just an awesome, passionate administrator that is unique in his own special way. And I don't know, maybe you think that might be just a little juice grenade injury there. Maybe
it could be. It could be.
Oh man, we've got Tim joining us. Good morning, Tim from New Jersey, and we've got M. Murphy, 1964, says the punks who are true to kids. There you go. So that's amazing, gentlemen. And so thank you so much for the introductions. Thank you so much to everybody that's watching and listening to us. I really appreciate you guys. And again, let's go ahead and just get started, guys. Let's talk about, you've talked a little bit about your current roles that you're serving and, a little bit about your background. But what I always love to do is this first segment of the show, I always like to dig in deep, like, in the past, what led you to this course or, to get into education. So we'll start with Mike. Mike, as you were growing up and thinking about professions or what it is that you wanted to do, is education really the path that you wanted to take? And if so, or if not, what was it that sparked that passion or that interest for education? So Mike, we'll get started with you.
Yeah, no, growing up in high school, I never wanted to be a teacher. I was always a good student. And then in high school, I, got mixed in with some different crowds, and I could have gone a completely different path as some of the people I grew up with did. But there were always a couple teachers who saw I had the mohawk and the skateboard and the size 60, kickwear jeans, Jenko jeans. Like they saw past all that, and they saw something in me, and they really try to push me and encourage me to do something more. So I, by my junior year, I kind of got back on track and was focusing on my education and kind of disconnecting myself from some of those bad habits. So we don't want to see our kids, the path the kids go down. And I was working in a restaurant, and I loved cooking in a restaurant. Like there was something about it. And that's what I thought I was going to do. Like, I'm going to go to culinary school. But then, I graduated high school. I wanted to take a year off. And my mom said, no, if you take a year off, you will never go back. I know you. You're going to get stuck in your ways, working in like this, restaurant bar, and that's all you're going to ever do. So I started going to school, and I had no idea what I was going to do. Like I just was taking the classes, to appease people. And then I remember I was sitting there in the courtyard on campus one day, and I was like, I just started getting these flashbacks, like these teachers that had connected with me throughout high school. And I was like, man, like if it wasn't for them, like I wouldn't be here now. And I know my mom pushed me too, but if it wasn't for them, like who knows where I would have gone. And I was like, I'm gonna be a teacher for get into education to help those kids who aren't seen or who maybe are, not in the in crowd, and, try to help guide them to where they need to go. And so that's kind of why I got into education. That's kind of like my why of why I do this, to let those kids know that we all can become something. So,
man, that is great. So, I mean, that really, again, speaks volumes too, because there's so many students that go down different paths, and
right.
And it's also just who you're hanging out with, and you never really think about consequences when you're young, you're living
Right.
this life. But I love the fact that you mentioned that there were some teachers, there was somebody there that saw past everything, the
Right.
outer, saw past that behavior, saw past all of those things, and said, hey, there's something there. And the fact that you were able to get back on track and now making a difference, and now, taking those experiences that you've gone through and applying them into your current job role,
Right.
which is so important, because I'm sure you see that continually still to this day, and it's something that it's great to have somebody like you in that leadership role, that principal role, that can see past those things, those maybe little behavior issues that, somebody say, oh, well, those are behavior, or, social emotional, and you're seeing past that, and you're there and you're able
Right.
to give that encouraging word. So that's
Yeah.
wonderful, man. I love
you.
that you're able to do that.
Thank you.
Josh, how about yourself, Josh? Tell us a little bit about how you, landed in the education world.
Yeah, for me, it was the same way as Mike. I didn't really plan on being an educator. I was always a good student in school. I fell into like the straight edge crowd in school, and like I grew up in the country, but like went to punk rock shows in the city and fell in with like the crew of kids there, like a lot of straight edge Christian hardcore and punk kids. And so I never was going down a bad path, but I definitely didn't think I was going to go on a path to be an educator. In fact, I wanted to go to art school or do something with music. My two favorite classes, I was in band from like 4th grade to 12th grade in school. And then I loved art. I took art all 4 years. I even a couple of us, we couldn't take art one year because it conflicted with another class we had to take. So we convinced our teacher to let us do a independent study as sophomores. So just think of this right now. You're an art teacher and you're going to let 4 sophomore boys have your room during your prep hour, and you're not going to be in there. And so like we convinced her to let us do an independent study to do art on our own. We did art 2 that year on our own, but that was what I want to do. I want to go to art school. I want to do graphic design. I wanted to do, animation or something like that. And then when push came to shove, I actually went to Chicago and checked out the Art Institute. I did like a week on that campus and at the Schaumburg campus before my senior year. I was like, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do. And then my parents were like, we don't think that you should leave the state to go to school. Because I grew up in Michigan. They're like, I don't think you should leave the state to go to school. And, we really, we want to help you, but we're not going to help with college if you leave the state. And I was like, well, then there's no reason for me to go to art school. Like flip the table and be like, dang it, that's it.
I'm out.
Because there were like two-year degree programs. So
Right.
What's the point? Like, I'm going to stay here for a year. So I decided, you know what? I really loved I was like, okay, I grew up in Michigan. I grew up in, a town where like your parents worked at Dow or General Motors, right? And then the professionals that I saw were nurses and teachers. And so I was like, well, I definitely don't want to be a nurse because I don't want to see needles or blood. So I'm out of that. So I decided I was going to be a teacher. I love social studies in high school. Government was really one of my favorite things. So I said, okay, I'm going to be a social studies teacher. So that's how I got into education. That first year of college, I was all right, let's check this out. Let's do this, join the program. And every time I stepped foot into a classroom during those years being in college, you do all your practicum hours and stuff like that. I was like, okay, this is it. I did it. This is what I want to do. And fell in love with it. It was a place where I could bring during student teaching, I would bring my guitar in. We'd write songs about stuff. I could do art projects with my social studies kids and cement that into what we were talking about. I could bring music into it and talk about that and art history with kids. And so that let me bring those passions into what I do. And that's how I found myself into education. And so that was it.
Man, that's great. And I love hearing that because again, it actually, your story, Josh, kind of reminds me a little bit about myself. When I first started, I would bring my guitar into class and I'm teaching math. Mm-hmm. And so, sometimes it was just what I knew. I mean, music is what I loved. I mean, playing in bands for a couple of years, playing saxophone, playing guitar, playing bass. So I was like, hey, I would go ahead and just bring in a guitar, just have some fun with the kids, engage them. And it's still part of the lesson. I mean, it's just a little bit teaching a little bit different. It doesn't look like the traditional, practical way of doing it, but kids are learning, they're remembering. And more than anything, I think with what you both bring is you are able to create those learning experiences. So Josh, in the classroom, those learning experiences, cementing what you love, like you said, your passion for art, bringing that in, tying it into your history class. Mike, also your experiences with music, your experiences with your youth and everything, and bringing that into your roles. Man, it's just amazing. That extra, I think, layer, that life, that experience that you're bringing really makes a huge, huge difference. And I think that's wonderful. And I wanted to touch just a little bit on what Josh said. You were going through the program, you had the ability to go into classrooms and do some student teaching. Right now, here, at least in our area, we're seeing a slight decline into the School of Education. Yeah. And, oftentimes it's, what else can we do? They're trying to think of what else can we do to, engage the students, and then coming in out of college, how are they going to be able to engage our learners now? So I think, things are changing. But I think that, being able to do what you said, take the passion that they want to be educators, but what else are they passionate about, and how they can bring it in to the classroom and tie it into their lessons. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, we talked about that on one of our episodes, the idea of like bringing your passion into what you do, right? Because I mean, Mike loves skateboarding, and he brings that in. He rides a skateboard around campus as a principal, right? Like, I love music, I love art, I bring that into what I do. And as educators, if you can find that thing that you love, that passion that you have, it might be gardening. We have a gardening club on campus. That's great. The kids love going out there, going and doing that. And that's two teachers who are like, yeah, I love science. I love doing this. Let's make it happen. We have a teacher who loves Dungeons and Dragons. So he has a 3D printer, and he's done entire lessons with his kids using Dungeons and Dragons and engaging them in that, like making the little figurines and building stuff with them. Whatever your passion is, for us, it's punk rock, right? So we called the episode like, what's your punk, right? So what's the thing that we love? We love punk rock. What's the thing that you love that you can bring in? Because if you can come into that classroom with that excitement, with that energy, then the kids around you, and they're going to feed off that, and they're going to get excited. And if you help them find their passion, if you help them plug into that thing you love, for me, it was art and music as a kid. Whenever I could plug into that into a classroom, I was like, heck yeah, let's do this, right? So if we can do that for kids and create those experiences, that makes me love my job way more as an educator, right? A canned program, opening up the book and having to read the lesson wasn't going to make me love my job. being able to bring in my guitar and have us write songs about the Salem witch trials or whatever thing we could do, I was like, okay, that's exciting. My kids were pumped about it because I was pumped about it. And we got to like do something great that I loved and that they loved.
I think, and I'm going to touch on what Josh said. I think, being a principal, obviously we have new staff that come in, and we have student teachers that come in, and a lot of them feel they have to do that stereotypical canned program, or I'm the teacher. So you can't know about really my outside life except like, okay, yeah, I have 2 kids and 3 cats and this and that. And when in my first few years as a principal, like I did the stereotypical principal thing. I thought I had to. And I was miserable, and the culture in our building was miserable. And I don't want to say miserable, but I saw it decline rapidly. People weren't enjoying being there. And that's what school, like Josh said, we got to bring these experiences. So when I started opening up and been like, all right, yeah, I've skateboarded my whole life. Here's my skateboard. And I'm bringing the kids, elementary kids just are like blown away by like, oh my God, the principal just went by on a skateboard. But then like you got these kids who then I would connect with them and like, hey, all right, you earned this many points on your goal sheet, or you don't get sent out of class for this, for these next 5 days. I'm going to take you out on the blacktop in the back, and we're going to skateboard together and teach. And it was just me connecting with them and reaching out to them. But the staff also saw me as a person. I think that's what it is. We need people to see us as people, as humans, not as I'm this teacher, I'm this principal with my tie, and that's what we need in education right now, especially coming out of this pandemic. We just need to connect with each other and know, like, look, we're all human. We're all through this together. This is what I'm into. So I think if we could get more districts and building leaders, because that's where it's going to start, to let, like you said, Fonz, earlier, let their teachers, and maybe we said this in the pre-recording, but let people try things and do things and fail from it and then get back up and let's do it. Like, don't be afraid to have some fun,
Yeah.
I mean,
no. Yeah, I agree with you, especially that fun part. And I think that now, this is what I've seen, at least my observation is now that teachers have come back to their classroom, there's that comfort level now, you're back into muscle memory, the familiarity of being in the classroom. But I think that because of this gap that there was because of virtual instruction coming back, I think like a lot of our teachers are overwhelmed, and they know that the students may have, may have missed a couple of things as far as, not all the TEKS or the standards were taught because, we're limited to certain things. And of course, you can't just flip the switch and tell one teacher, hey, you're going from, brick and mortar to online and expect them to cover everything.
Right.
So, there will be a couple of standards, but I think that they're putting so much pressure on themselves because this is what they're used to. They didn't get the A rating. They didn't get the scores. And it's been a mental thing, but it's because it's been ingrained in them for the longest time from leadership, and decisions are based on how well you do. And so teachers are they're really overworking, and they forget to make those human connections. I was like, even for them, like you said, when I was in the classroom, I think what helped me is I came in from the business background, and as education was my second career. Now I'm 16 years in, but the customer service skills, the personalization, all of that I learned in the business sector really worked out really well. And then bringing in my passion and just me, being vulnerable and not being afraid to fail. But the kids would be like, hey, Mr. Mendoza, how about we try it this way? And how about we try it this way? And so I was learning from them. Yeah. They were learning a little from me. But by the end of the 4th class, I looked like the subject matter expert because I was learning from them.
Right.
But you build that community, and they see that, they buy into you. And right now, I think a lot of students have not quite had the opportunity to come in, reacclimate themselves and socialize with their friends. And then the teachers to themselves are trying, but then they feel that pressure because, hey, we need to meet these standards. We need to do this. And because at the end of this year, they're still going to take a state exam. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, it's hard.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And I've the past few years, anyone who knows me, I don't put hey, we're going to make sure we ace this test or do this. We're going to put relationships first. It's been like that for years before the pandemic. and everything else is going to fall in place. And then, like you said, we've come back, and I've seen some of my staff kind of revert back to that. Okay, well, we need to get them caught up this. When I met with my team leaders over the summer, we have to have all of our teams make their SMART goals, and usually they have to make like 5 or 6. And I said, we just talked about this in our last episode. I said, no, make 3, no more than 3 SMART goals. And it does not need to be tied to ELA or math. Like, what do you as a team want to accomplish this year? Is it making sure your parents are just as actively involved as they were when we were virtual because they were sitting in your classroom every day? Make that your SMART goal. And they were kind of thrown off. They're like, you don't want us to focus on ELA and math? Like, I do. You're going to teach ELA and math. But what's really important to you right now? Is it making sure your kids just are welcome back? And I've noticed, because I'm in every classroom every day, the kids don't care if you don't know what's going on or you have a hiccup in your lesson plan. These kids, especially with us, because this is our first time we're all back. They're just happy to be there. Our 5th grade rooms, our numbers are at about 26, 27 right now, which is not, that's normal for a 5th grade class. But because of, we have to have the social distancing and all that, our teachers are freaking out. One of my 5th grade teachers, he took a new role as a art, music, PE teacher this year. And so he had the 5th grade class, and he asked them, he goes, how do you guys feel about having 27 kids in your class? Thinking they're going to be like, oh no, it's too much. We want less. They were like, we don't care. We're just happy to be with everybody. Like they like, we actually like having more people in our class because we haven't seen kids for so long. So I think it's the adults that we need to just let's celebrate being back together and reacclimate how to be back together.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah, we told our staff at the beginning of the year, like, we start on a Tuesday, right? Like, this is normally we would start on a Wednesday and you'd get 3 days, you're out the door, and then we started on a Tuesday this year, and we told everybody, like, don't touch standards this week. Don't do it. Don't jump into curriculum this week. You've got 4 days. Some of our kids haven't been on a campus in a year and a half. Some of you haven't been teaching in a classroom in a year and a half. We came back in person, some of our students, last year in October, right? So some of us had been back in a classroom with masks and all of that, but some of our teachers stayed remote all of last year because they were servicing our remote only students. And we're like, don't touch curriculum. Don't touch standards. Just build relationships. Get those kids used to being in classrooms, talking to them about what your expectations are for how you're going to work together, and build that community in your room first. You have to do that. And I think that's any year. As a teacher, I always started my year with something called Buckley Boot Camp. And we do dumb activities, communication games, like team building games to get used to each other and get used to that idea of what it was like, why we would need to use explicit language when we worked with each other, so we knew what we were talking about, what it was like to work in groups. We used to do all these dumb games, and that's what I did those first 3 days. I wouldn't touch anything. I wouldn't even look at a syllabus because we're going to get to the content, but we're going to get through the content and the standards much better if we know how to work together. Right. You got to go slow to go fast. Right. And that's the truth when you're building that culture and that community in your classroom.
And that is, I'm sorry. I wanted to say, it's so important building that. And like you said, Mike, you said from the very get-go, relationships. And I think that if you do take the time, like you gentlemen described, to do that and front load that, it doesn't matter if it takes, 3 days, 4 days, or a week. That's the return on investment on that in the long run, like you said, is going to be great because the kids know the expectations. They know those things. And like Josh is joining us here from Texas. He says connection before content, and that's so important. And believe it or not, we came back last week and we had filled in at least our curriculum calendars. The whole first week is off. Like you're not touching anything. Yeah. Well, walking into classrooms and everything, there's already teachers that are already in the third week of, they're going through this really fast because I think they feel that if I pour it into them and just give it to them quick, like by the time they take the test, they're going to be fine because they feel that pressure of I need to get my scores up because if not, I'm either going to be moved to a different grade level or I may be reassigned or do this. And they're coming in with that fear. Yeah. But we all know where that needs to be taken care of all the way from the top down. So somewhere along those lines, that message may not be getting across, directly or correctly,
I think, I mean, and not just, well, especially this year coming back from what we've gone through and we're still going through. But every year, those first few days, the first couple of weeks, it needs to just be a celebration. Like school should be a celebration. I've got staff coming up to me. When are we gonna do our map testing? Because we were supposed to do our map testing our first full week, which was this, and it got pushed back because we don't have our new devices weren't all tagged and ready to get passed out. I'm like, I understand they want to know where the kids are at so they can know how to focus what they're going to do, but it's kind of like, just chill out. Like we're just here to get reacclimated. So celebrate being together, celebrate a new school year, celebrate Mondays,
Yeah, like you said.
I like that. Celebrate Mondays. I
do. Yeah, I'm playing music out in the parking lot on Monday mornings, pumping everybody up, the Trolls soundtrack and, the Principals in Action soundtrack. And the parents have told me, like, this is the best way to start school. I'm like, well, yeah, let's get it pumped up. Let's get excited. Everyone should want to be there,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I love, like, even on your website, as I'm sharing the link, make sure that you follow or visit, punkrockclassrooms.com. And then that way you can check out Josh and Mike there on their page. But just even your heading, you build your crew. That's essentially you as a teacher. You're building your crew up. You're building your students up. They're buying into you. Make a scene, and then teach with passion. I mean, that's really, I love your heading right here, and that's really what I feel that I have been able to do the last 11 years in the classroom, and even now, as an instructional specialist, being able to work with teachers, you just really want to build them up and build that crew, and just I always tell them, just get clicky with it, and if it doesn't work, just click undo. You're not going to break anything, but just giving them that comfort level where they and celebrate them too as well. That's so important. All right, man. Well, this is great. This has been just an amazing back and forth, and getting to see things from your perspectives. One in that principal leadership role, Josh, you as a teacher, and now moving up to Title I, and seeing those things too as well from your experiences. And I think a lot that you've hit on really hits close to home, because this is what I'm seeing firsthand. And I my heart goes out to the teachers that are still have not recovered from that burnout, still haven't recovered, but they're in there, they're in the trenches, and they mean well, with all this testing, and they want to do that to the students. But in the end, I think it will, cause a little bit more burnout, because it's that anxiety, that stress level, and so on. And I don't want any more teachers to be leaving our profession, because we need wonderful educators. Right. So what are some things that maybe, Josh, I know you talked over a couple of things, but maybe in your role, maybe within your teaching role, or even now, what are some ways that you are, trying to, put the teachers at ease? Is there, something that your school is doing just to kind of, bring them back and reel them back and say, hey, all right, we're going to be good?
Yeah, we have a really good culture on our campus. My principal's been there. This is her 10th year. She's built a really family, tight-knit group of teachers. And it's been really good to come into that and see how she builds those relationships with everybody. And before the last 4 years, I served as president of our teachers union in Mesa, and then 2 years before that as vice president. So it was a lot of work around how do we support teachers through low pay. We went on a statewide walkout in Arizona. We worked with our district to increase salaries, and I'm serving on a retention and recruitment task force starting in September with our district. And it comes down to, and I think as in this new role, I see myself, the way that I can kind of help put teachers at ease is to just be there and just do whatever I can to help them out. So if they can't connect their computer, they just put TVs in all of our rooms, like 75-inch televisions, to get rid of our projectors, right? No one knows exactly how to hook it up yet or how to do what with it. And so, look, if I have to come into your room and do that, then I'm going to come in your room and help you do that. If I have to go into the cafeteria and open 1,000 milk cartons, like I said before, then I will do that. We don't get a lot of rain in the desert, and it rained for like a week straight. So there was one day I was out there squeegeeing sidewalks so there weren't giant puddles, and like the sandbags came in for us so we wouldn't flood some classrooms and stuff. And I think letting your teachers know, and as a teacher, this is the stuff that I really appreciated, that you were willing to do whatever it took to help students succeed. whether that's, picking up trash, or that's coming in and solving a tech problem, or if that's just listening to a teacher and just going in and hearing a teacher out. My role as when I was a union president was a lot of that, was a lot of just getting a call from a teacher and listening to what was going on and going, let me see what I can do to help. I'm going to find out what I can find out. And that's what I do now. I don't have the answers for everything, right? But telling a teacher, I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out, and you and I are going to fix it. That I think lets a teacher know that they don't have to dwell or let the weight of whatever it is just crush them, because they know they can bring it to you and you're going to help them solve the problem, right? That we can be that resource to lift them up, to help them get out of whatever it is they're getting out of, and that we're going to help them be successful in their classroom. Because if our teachers are successful, those students are going to be successful. And I don't get to go into classrooms and teach, the 450 kids we have on campus, but I do get to support, the 20-25 educators on our campus and lift them up so that they can lift those kids up.
Nice. Excellent, Josh. I really appreciate that. How about you, Mike? I know you're big on culture that in your school. Give us a little bit about what you're doing as a leader. I know you touched a little bit on that. What else are some other things that you're doing on your campus?
Yeah, so I'll be the first to admit, when we were virtual last year, I am not a good virtual leader. I was horrible at it, and I feel I did let my staff down, and I've told them that, and I apologize, and this year's going to be different. But so I'm just getting back to what I've been doing. Like, I got a mobile desk, so I'm never in my front office. Like, I'm out in the hallways, I'm in the classrooms, I'm there with them, so they know. You need, like Josh said, just being there. And I don't have all the answers. My staff knows I don't have all the answers, but like, you can come to me. Okay, you worry about these, 20, 30 kids in your room right now. Let me see if I can figure this out or get some advice, and either I'll come back or someone else will come back. But I'm here to support you. So, and that's what I've been doing. Like my emails, I have so many emails built up, because when there's those kids in our building, like, that's my focus. I'm in there with them, and I'm in there in the lunchroom for 2.5 hours a day, because I want my paraprofessionals and our supervisors to know I'm here with you. Let's make sure everything goes smooth, and just letting them know, like I said before, like meeting with the team leaders, just worry about connecting with each other, worry about building those relationships, and I'm just trying to make it a celebration. We did 2 pep rallies our first week. Our first week was 2.5 days. We did 2 pep rallies. One was school wide. We went outside. Then the last was on Friday. We had to do some readjustments because it's so hot here with the humidity in Chicago. I mean, you guys got me beat, but you have dry heat, whatever that means. But over here, it's disgusting for us. So, we had to do some readjustments. We did like a pep rally where all the teachers introduced themselves with theme songs, and just making it a place that people want to be at. And, the first day with the staff, I remember talking to my assistant principal afterwards. I'm like, I don't know, our first staff meeting kind of didn't go over the way I wanted it to. And she's like, yeah, I kind of felt like a weird vibe too. But then I was like, as the 2 weeks have gone on now, like, I feel like we're back to where we are. And, we just, that mentality, these aren't your 4th grade kids in your class. Like, these are all our kids. Like, so no matter what, like, we're all in it together. And I mean, I'm just there, just out there with them, and playing my Trolls soundtrack and Moana soundtrack. And it's funny, I got this big speaker I just wheel around now. So now I have the mobile desk, a skateboard, and a speaker on wheels. And I just park it in the hall, and I was playing some music, and one of the teachers, I was by her room, and she stuck her head out because I don't know what they were independent reading or something. She just kind of gave me a look, but she smiled and closed her door. Didn't say, hey, can you turn that off? Because I think they've all realized, like, no, this is going to be part of our culture. Like,
yeah,
there's kids who have walked by me. There are staff who have walked by me who they've got that look. Because I think that we were talking about this on a boxer group last night. This is the most exhausting year ever. I think we all forgot what it was like to reopen school. And every educator is more exhausted than they've ever been right now. But they'll walk by me and they just hear the music. And you could tell, because music, you guys talked about it. Music, there's just something about it lifts people up. And so, I mean, that's just kind of what I'm doing. I'm just doing my thing. And people say, oh, you're just hanging out, having fun, but there's a whole method behind it, because if you don't have that culture where everyone feels belonged, everyone feels supported, you're, like we said earlier, you're not going to get to all the other things we have to do as educators, or it's going to be much more difficult.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, I love that. Like, the way that you guys seem very active, and the roles that you take, and just, it's so important. Like you said, just that the teachers feel like their voice is being heard, they're being helped. And even though you may not have the answers, you're willing to go out there and just find the answers for them. And like you said, one less thing that they have to dwell on. And so that's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about just you both and your podcast too as well, because I want to know just the history of punk rock classrooms. Josh being, in Arizona, and of course, Mike being in Chicago. I want to know, how did you two connect, and how did this project come about?
I love this story.
This is good stuff. People don't believe that this is this is the reality. So
first off, Josh and I have never met face to face. Yeah, we've been doing this. This is 3 years.
This is our third year of the podcast. We just started.
So we were supposed to meet at the Teach Better conference, 21 or 20, but then it got canceled because of COVID. So we've never sat down in a room together. So even my staff, they don't believe. Like, I listened to your podcast. You guys sound like you're right next to each other. I'm like, yeah, no, we're not. We're on Zoom. We were doing Zoom before everyone else was doing Zoom. But so yeah, I was doing it was a Teach Better Twitter chat or Mastery chat at the time. And it was Josh's first time ever doing a Twitter chat.
Yeah.
And I had just written a blog, and I was like, oh my God, this question, like I just wrote about this in this blog. So I shared out my link, and I was like, oh yeah, I'd check out my new blog. And Josh read it in the middle of the chat, because then he was like, oh my God, he just referenced Sick of It All, like this hardcore band from New York.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, someone read my blog. All right, cool. And then I think that we started just messaging each other and talking, and we were just going back and forth talking about punk rock and education, and how, because that was what the blog was kind of about. Like, I saw some of these parallels from growing up in the punk rock scene. I'm like, that could work in education. Like, you have to have passion and whatnot. So then we just were talking, and we Josh like, hey, would you want to do a podcast? I'm like, yeah, I've never done one. I've always wanted to. And he's like, well, I've done a comic book podcast. Like, we'll figure it out. So we kind of talked about it for a while, and then we just started doing it. And we didn't have no rhyme or reason. And we just were like, we enjoyed doing it. And then it kind of took off, and people were like, oh, I love what you guys are saying. I wasn't in that scene, but I see what you're, and we're kind of like, oh, people are connecting with it. And, it's grown to where it's at now. It's pretty exciting. It's cool.
No, it is exciting. And what I love about it too is I can relate to it, because being part of a scene down here, and also being part, in a couple of band projects and things of that sort, I can totally relate. And then of course, just hearing you gentlemen talk and just describe your work ethic, and just the way that you're there for people. I mean, that's what the scene was about here. It's like, you're there for one another.
Right.
You're there. I mean, one guy gets kicked down, you pick them up, and, you take care of them and lift them up. And that's what I grew up, from the age of was it 17 to about when I had to get a real job, maybe 20, I don't know, about 20, 24. So, I mean, even though I was short-lived there in the scene, but I experienced those things, and just being able to lift others up and take care of everybody. And now that translates so well into education. So I can see how, people, educators, whether they're not in the scene or are in the scene, can definitely relate to what it is that you're sharing. So that's great. The thing that I do find funny is that you still haven't had the opportunity to meet face to face.
Never met face to face. And I think for us, we grew everything that I do in education, and Mike had thought about it in an education sense, and I had done some union work and thought about organizing and the stuff I was doing in the union through a punk rock lens, right? Everything I learned that I think I put into practice is something I learned while being a punk rock kid, right? That DIY work ethic, this sort of just do it, just figure it out, who cares? Just and getting a group of people together to you take your role, make it happen. Everybody can put on this show or whatever it is. All those things I learned in the punk rock scene. And then when Mike and I were starting to talk about it, I'm like, oh, well, that's why I'm the educator I am. is because of all these things that I did growing up in, punk rock scene, being in bands, recording our own stuff, putting out our own tapes, putting on shows, figuring out how to build pyrotechnics for a CD release show, right? Like burning off arm hair and stuff like that all came from, like that punk rock scene, and just that desire to just like, let's figure it out and let's make it happen. And let's do the best we can do with what we have, is what drives me as an educator. And it all came out of just being a punk and just like those connections I built as a kid. And, being able to get together and being able to talk about this. And, you had mentioned we're just starting season 3. So our first season really focused in on, well, what does punk rock have to do with education? And so that first season, we really sat down and talked about ideas in punk rock, whether it was like, classrooms are for circle pits, or, the DIY mentality, or bringing your passion into what you do. Last season was a lot of, let's look at something in education. Let's look at a topic in education, like evaluations or state testing. And let's look at it through a punk rock lens, right? This year, who knows, right? Like we're just excited to keep going. We bring on guests and talk to them about what's going on. Some of them are punk rock kids who turned into educators. Some of them are educators that we've really connected with, or think are doing really good things. And then we also do something that I think has been really beneficial for me, is we do these reflection episodes. Yeah. And I think one of the most important things you can do as an educator is to look back on how your lesson went, how your week went, how that unit went. How did my conversation with that parent on the phone go, right? And so we do like reflection episodes, usually 1 or 2 a month. We do a regular episode, then a reflection, then a regular episode, and then an interview, usually is how a month works if everything goes according to plan, right? But those reflection episodes are really something that they're like audio blogs, right? Yeah. It's where we just kind of get to talk about it, And
it's kind of funny because every time, we kind of rotate. So like Josh will have a reflection coming out this Monday. And a lot of times we're both like talking to each other, like, hey, what's your reflection going to be about? We're like, I don't know. And a lot of times, like, I think of it like it'll hit me like when I'm having that cup of coffee the day I'm going to record it. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened this week. I'm like, that's what I want to mention. And like Josh said, it's key. It's almost like a therapy sometimes to like get these things out and I feel at the end of all of my reflections, I'm always like, I don't know if anybody got anything to this. I just rambled for 10, 15 minutes. But then people will reach out to me and send me, messages like, no, I really connected with what you were saying. And so, it's like, oh, all right. I guess it wasn't just me rambling for 15 minutes.
Oh, but that's great, because you just never know. I mean, what one may be going through, there's tons of other educators or people that may be going through something like that, but just sometimes they feel alone, like, no, this is only happening to me, when in reality it's happening to others. And I think that really helps out a lot. So the fact that you're doing that and you're putting yourself out there in this vulnerable position, and just really speaking from your heart and from your experience, really adds that much more value to what you're sharing, because it's not something, like you said, it's just something cookie cutter. It's just your experience. And I mean, and that's so punk rock, because it's all about your experience. Like Josh, going back to the way that he learned, a lot of the things, from the scene, I always revert back to improvise, adapt, and overcome. I mean, those have been my 3 words in education that have helped me be a successful educator. And that to me is what is so punk rock. You improvise, you adapt and overcome, figure it out, do it, connect, see, and bring it to fruition, and see how that goes. And so I think what you guys are doing is just wonderful and is just amazing, and being able to put yourselves out there and help so many others, such as myself, that want to continue to learn and continue to see things from a different lens, from different perspectives, from the administrator lens, from the social studies now turned Title I teacher, ex punk rock scenesters, turned educators. And that to me is just showing me your passion. And that really helps spark my passion too for what I do. So just keep doing what you're doing, guys. I'm just so excited. And I'm honored to actually, have the opportunity to get to interview you and connect with you and hear your stories. So that's something that's awesome. Well, as we kind of get closer to wrapping up, I always throw these questions out, to our guests. And so we'll go ahead and get started with you, Mike. So, Mike, if you can have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Ooh, a billboard with anything on it. I think I would just put a message out there, kind of like to stay true to yourself. I think too many people try not to be who they are, and not just in education, in many aspects. I worked in a department of a trading firm as a summer job for a while. I've worked, in kitchens, and I think, and especially kids, we see they're trying to, and I know they're learning who they are, but I think just a message to be who you are and don't be ashamed of that,
There you go. That's good. How about you, Josh? What would your billboard say on it?
Oh man, that's good. There's a quote that I really love, but I wouldn't want to use the quote. There's a quote by Howard Zinn. It's actually a title of one of his books. So you can't be neutral on a moving train. And I think for me, one of the things that I having been on sort of the union side of it for years, literally since I was a first year teacher, being on our bargaining committee and all of that stuff. For me, it ends up being like, if you want change, you've got to make change. You've got to do it. You have to go out there. And I think it's that DIY mentality. So it might just be do the work, right? Because if we want change, if we want to change education, if we want to change what our classrooms look like, if we want to change what our department looks like, or our school looks like, or the culture in our campus is like, we have to do the work to make that happen.
Right.
We can't just go, man, I'm bummed about this. I'm upset about this. I wish this would change. If you wish it, you got to do it, right? You got to make that change. So I've spent a lot of time talking to teachers to go like, hey, write this email, come to this meeting, be this voice. And I think, in my role now, it ends up being, what can I help you do as an educator in our building to make this change happen? Whether it's how can I coach you through that? How can I get you the resources you need? How can I help you find those resources? If you want to change something on our campus, you want to change something in our building, if you want to change something in a student, how do we make that happen? We have to do that. We just can't wait for it.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Nice.
That's good.
I love what Tim says here. It says this conversation is going to make me stage dive off my desk. I love it, Tim. And Murph, too. Thank you so much, Murph. Great for joining us and sticking around this whole episode. It says great interview and just be you. There you go. All right. So now this time we'll start with Josh. Josh, what is your edu kryptonite?
Oh, man. The thing in education that I can't do. Oh, man. That's a really good question. I'm gonna be very honest. And for a long time, this was something that just drove me absolutely batty. Was just the next word, right? What's the new education word we're using? I just tune out when someone gives me a edu-speak phrase, and I go, can you just tell me what you mean? Don't use this word just because I'm done. I'm done if you try to I get it. You read a book, you're in your master's program, you found this phrase that someone came up with. I love it. I have a degree too. I have 2 of them. I'm working on my 3rd one. But can we just talk about what we want to do and not some fancy word for it? So I sometimes edu-speak words just drive me nuts.
Love it. I love it. Hey, that definitely hits here. That's really good. I love that. All right. I used to tell people when I went from business to math teacher, high school math teacher, learning those skills, I said, man, I was doing personalized learning before it was even a thing because I was doing customer service. I was like, now people are using that buzzword like, oh my gosh, I was like, I've been doing it for years.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Maybe the copy machine. Maybe the copy machine is the second one.
Yeah, I get you. All right, Mike, what would be your edu kryptonite, Mike?
Then this is interesting because, I'm a building principal, so I'm supposed to be an expert at this data analysis. I don't like it. I hate it. I'm all about relationships and connecting and having fun. And, now, don't get me wrong. Yes, there's data and we need to look at it and we need to see where we're going. I get that. But sometimes it's just people are analyzing data just because they feel they're supposed to analyze. You don't have to have analysis on every single thing that happens in education. I mean, and I think it ties in with sometimes these meetings. You don't need to have a 3-4 hour meeting where we're just talking about numbers and data and going nowhere. So, I mean, that's what really just zaps the life out of me is, but going back to building your crew, I've got staff who know, because I've stood up, I've told parents at meetings, I don't care about the test scores. Like, I don't care about this data. I'm not good at it. So I've got staff who will say, hey, I know we just finished our winter map assessment. Do you want me to look at this data for you and kind of tell you what it says? I go, yeah, please. And like, they'll do it because they like it. And then they'll sit down with me and they'll be like, okay, here's the trends we're looking at. I'm like, perfect. Then I go into a meeting and I always will say, that I didn't come up with this. Teacher, Mr. Buckley came up with this and helped me. I'm going to give them the props. I'm not going to steal their thunder. But that's definitely got to be mine.
There you go. That's good. That's good. I hear you. Yeah, data's everywhere. Data drives decisions, and sometimes it's like, oh man, that's just a lot of numbers. Just tell me. Yeah, keep it simple. I'm always all about just keep it simple. Tell me, like, kind of like what Josh says. It's like, this is your phrase. Just tell me what you want us to do, what it means.
Right.
Have those conversations and see what we can do. Yeah, great, excellent. All right. So this time we'll start with Mike first. Mike, if you could make one of your hobbies into a profession, which one would it be?
Oh, well, it's got to be skateboarding. I mean, I'm nowhere near, I never was good, and I'm nowhere near as halfway decent as I was as a youth. I still love it. I just love the feeling of just riding sometimes. But growing up, I was like, I'm going to be a pro skater. Like, I'm going to be in Thrasher magazine. Like, that's what I always thought. And, back then there wasn't a free skate park in every town. Now it's everywhere. It's more accepted. But I think if I could do that and make money and that's all I did all day, that's what I would do. I'd love it.
Awesome. Great. Josh, how about you?
Oh man, music. I love music. I love writing songs. I like playing guitar. I haven't been in a band in a while, but I record and it's like gravel dad punk rock is what I call it. Like folk rock is what I call it now, right? Because I can't sing very well, but I can growl enough with an acoustic guitar to like just have some fun. So that's what I would do. That's fun for me. I like writing songs and doing covers of like 80s punk songs that now sound like folk songs. So that's what I like. So
nice.
If I could take music and do something with it and make it something, that'd be fun.
Excellent. Wonderful. And the last question, I don't know if you want to combine this or maybe it's just, we'll go either or since both of you are podcast hosts. But if the roles were reversed and this was your show, what would be one question you'd like to ask me? So we'll start with Josh this time.
All right, Fonz, I got to know, you've talked about bands a couple times. I want to know what type of music, what was the name of one of those bands you were in?
Okay, so the very first band that I was in, because I was since from 6th grade on, I played saxophone. I was in a ska band called the Escalators. So we were called the Escalators.
I love it.
Yeah. So I'll share some stuff if I have. I should have some pictures and some flyer pictures and stuff like that. So I'll share that. So that was the first band that I was in that I kind of got more involved into the scene. So
I always wanted to play trumpet in a ska band. Like I had some friends who were in a ska band and like I joined them for one song on my trumpet and I was like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was the greatest thing ever. I mean, I had so much fun with it because we had the founder or the leader of the band. His name is Johnny. He played trombone. So we had saxophone, we had trombone. For a little while, we did have a trumpet player, but I mean, it was just really just fun ska, like just
that's
playing
awesome.
on, and awesome. Just being in the scene. So that was great. All right, Mike, your turn, Mike.
Yeah. First off, I so wish ska would make another comeback. That was my favorite.
I think we're on good fourth wave, man. We're on good fourth wave right now. There's some good bands.
That punk ska back in the 90s was awesome. All right, so Fonz, if you could have a theme song play as you walk down the street or you walk down the halls in a school, what would that theme song be that just plays as you walk by?
Ooh, what would my theme song be? Oh man. Jeez. I'm trying to think here. That's a really good one. That is a really good one.
And this is a question I ask applicants when I interview them.
Matt, you know what? Actually, the one song that just came to mind, and I can't even remember the name of the band actually, but growing up having a little portable cassette player, the little, with the equalizer, my very first tape that I bought was the Rocky IV soundtrack. So my theme song would probably be the one, and it's just because it's so memorable in my head, just because it was so cool, would be the one where he's just driving down after Apollo Creed, passes, and he's just driving. I can't remember the name, but that song, just for me, just when I hear it, just makes me feel like, man, I'm just driving, like I'm determined, like
That's
I
awesome.
am gonna go and I'm gonna walk in and I'm just gonna own it. So
That's awesome.
That would be. I couldn't think of a punk rock one right now, right off the bat, because
that's a good answer though. That's a good one.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's how we started our school year. I mean, I know Mike had his teams come up with their theme song. We asked every one of our teachers. That's how we started our first meeting. Was, all right, we're gonna pass out little slips of paper. What's your theme song? What's your thing? And then we pulled them out of a hat, and everybody had to guess whose it was. Like we played a couple pieces of it from our phone, on the stereo in the cafeteria, and everybody had to guess whose song it was. It was good times. It was fun to hear everybody's like what their theme would be.
Music makes everyone happy.
Yeah,
always.
Exactly. And you know what? That one, I don't know. Like you said, it just makes me really happy. And that's the first one that I could kind of think of that really made me feel, because I just always remember that scene when I hear it, and he's just driving, and they just do that zoom on his eyes.
Yeah.
And he's just like questioning everything, but like determined, like, I'm going to be that change. I'm going to do something about this and just move forward. So I love that.
That's rad.
Awesome.
So well, guys, it's been an amazing conversation. It's been a pleasure. I can keep talking to you guys forever, but I respect definitely your time zone. So I know I've already woken you up very early, Josh and Mike, but I really sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, had such a great time with you guys. I loved your passion, your drive, everything, you speaking. I was just laser focused on you guys, because I love what you're bringing, your perspectives, your experiences. And I'm sure that our audience members that will be listening to this later on, those of you that were joining us live, like Amanda, M. Murphy, Tim, Karina, Josh, that were joining us also here live, definitely took a lot from this conversation. That will probably maybe like you said, we've got some people stage diving off desks right now, listening, watching live and so on. But thank you, Josh, for what you do as an educator, for your passion and your drive and the change that you're making. And Mike, the same thing. I really appreciate your honesty, being straightforward, and just being an amazing administrator, just saying that showing me that it's okay for an administrator to say, hey, I don't know, but let me find out. Hey, you know what? I don't like that up, but if you can figure it out and we can talk about it and see what I can do to make things better, or even just to talking to your teachers and so on, that really speaks volumes too. That it's that human aspect that you're people first, and we're not the all know-it-alls. And I think that's one thing that I love about this conversation, and really showing the human side of educators, that we're not robots. We have that human side. We don't know everything, but we're able to be that change that we want to see, and we're able to ask those questions and not be afraid to feel vulnerable. But it's all about building relationships first. So that's so punk rock. Love it. Guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you all. And for our audience members, all our audience members, guys, if you can just give us a like on the YouTube channel, subscribe to our channel, visit our website at myedtech.life. Drop us a review, drop us a line. I'd love to hear some feedback. As always, I'm data driven with your feedback. So then that way I can know what it is that I could do better to just bring you the best, because that's what it's all about. Connecting educators, creators, one show at a time, and learning from one another. So again, as always, thank you so much for joining us this Saturday. Make sure you join us next Saturday, as well as we're going to have an amazing show here with an amazing author who's doing some wonderful, wonderful work. And you'll see those promos coming up this coming week. But until next time, my friends, don't forget to stay techie.